The Caltherian Empire had ruled the Andromeda sector for over 3,000 years. Their massive dreadnoughts, each the size of a small moon, drifted through space like ancient gods of war. The crimson hulls gleamed with energy shields that could deflect entire planetary bombardments. No species had ever successfully challenged their authority. No one had ever dared to oppose them. Admiral Vextar stood on the command deck of the flagship Eternal Dominion, watching through the massive viewport as his fleet prepared for another conquest. 50 dreadnoughts floated in perfect formation, their weapon arrays charged and ready. Below them, the blue-green world of Kepler 442b spun slowly, unaware that its fate had already been decided. "Admiral," came the voice of his second-in-command, Commander Thalake. The reptilian officer's scales rippled with anticipation. "The orbital defenses have been analyzed. Primitive plasma cannons and kinetic barriers. They will fall within the hour." Vextar's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. The Keplerian civilization was barely 1,000 years old. Their technology was crude compared to Caltherian weapons that had been perfected over millennia. This would be another easy victory to add to the Empire's endless list of conquests. "Begin the bombardment," Vextar ordered. "Target their major cities first. Leave the industrial centers intact. We will need them for the workforce." The first wave of plasma bolts streaked down toward the planet's surface. Each shot carried enough energy to level a city block. The Keplerian shields flickered and died under the assault. Emergency broadcasts filled the communication channels as millions of beings fled their homes. Commander Thalake studied the tactical display with satisfaction. "Their fleet is moving to intercept, Admiral. 43 vessels. All of them obsolete frigate-class ships." "Let them come," Vextar said. "It will be good practice for our newer crew members." The Keplerian fleet approached in a desperate formation, their small ships weaving through space as they tried to avoid the Caltherian weapons. They fired everything they had: missiles, plasma bolts, kinetic rounds. The attacks bounced harmlessly off the dreadnought shields. Vextar watched the futile defense with cold satisfaction. This was how it always went. A primitive species would resist at first, throwing their pathetic fleets against Caltherian might. Then, they would break, surrender, and accept their new role as servants of the Empire. "Admiral." The sensor officer's voice cracked with surprise. "New contact on long-range sensors. Single vessel, approaching fast." Vextar turned toward the tactical display. A small blip appeared at the edge of their sensor range, moving toward the battle at incredible speed. "Classification? Unknown, sir. The design doesn't match any known vessel in our database." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. In 3,000 years of conquest, the Caltherian Empire had catalogued every ship design in the known galaxy. There were no unknowns. "Size estimate? Approximately 800 meters length. Much smaller than our dreadnoughts." Vextar relaxed slightly. Whatever this newcomer was, it posed no threat. A single ship, barely larger than a Caltherian escort vessel, could do nothing against his massive fleet. The unknown ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. It moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost organic, its dark hull reflecting no light. Strange markings covered its surface, not the flowing script of any known language, but harsh angular symbols that seemed to cut through space itself. "Incoming transmission, Admiral," the communications officer reported. "Put it through." The viewscreen flickered and displayed the interior of the alien ship's bridge. A bipedal creature stood at the center, wearing what appeared to be a dark blue uniform. Its skin was pale pink, with strange hair growing from the top of its head. Two small eyes stared out with an intensity that made Vextar uncomfortable. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Battleship Retribution," the alien said in perfect galactic standard. "You are ordered to cease your attack on the Keplerian world immediately and withdraw your forces." Commander Thalake's scales rippled with laughter. A single ship challenging the entire fleet? These Terrans must be insane. Vextar studied the alien captain on the screen. There was something in her expression that bothered him. No fear. No respect. Just cold determination. "I am Admiral Vextar of the Caltherian Empire. You will identify yourself properly and explain your presence in this system." "I already have," Captain Chen replied. "You have 60 seconds to begin withdrawing your forces," or we will consider you a hostile target." The entire bridge fell silent. In 3,000 years, no one had threatened the Caltherian Empire. The very idea was beyond comprehension. Vextar's mandibles spread wide in what his species used for laughter. "You dare threaten us? Do you have any idea what you're facing? 50 dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying your pathetic vessel with a single shot?" 47 seconds, Captain Chen said calmly. "This is ridiculous," Commander Thaleke muttered. "Admiral, shall I destroy this insect?" Vextar considered the situation. The alien ship had to be stopped, of course. But perhaps it would be more educational to let it attack first, to show the galaxy what happened to those who opposed the Empire. "Let it make the first move," he ordered. "Record everything. This will serve as an excellent example for future rebellions." Captain Chan's countdown continued with mechanical precision. 20 seconds. 15. 10. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. The Terran Battleship moved. Vextar had seen thousands of space battles, but he had never witnessed anything like what happened next. The Retribution accelerated to impossible speeds, its hull somehow withstanding forces that should have torn any ship apart. It closed the distance to the nearest dreadnought in seconds. "Fire all weapons!" Vextar shouted. 50 dreadnoughts unleashed their fury simultaneously. Plasma beams, particle cannons, and fusion warheads filled space with deadly energy. The barrage was enough to sterilize a continent. The Terran ship danced through the attack like a living thing. It twisted and rolled with impossible agility, somehow avoiding weapons fire that should have been unavoidable. Its hull seemed to bend space around itself, deflecting energy beams at impossible angles. "How are they doing that?" Commander Thaleke demanded. Before anyone could answer, the Retribution fired back. The Terran weapons were unlike anything in the Caltherian database. Instead of energy beams or projectiles, the ship seemed to fire pure mathematics, distortions in spacetime itself that struck the nearest dreadnought's shields and simply erased them from existence. "Shields down on the Vengeance," the tactical officer reported in disbelief. The second Terran salvo punched through the dreadnought's armor as if it were made of paper. The massive ship, pride of the Caltherian fleet, broke apart in a series of explosions that lit up the entire system. 50 dreadnoughts suddenly became 49. "Impossible," Vextar whispered. "Nothing can destroy a dreadnought that quickly." The Retribution was already moving toward its next target. The remaining dreadnoughts concentrated their fire, creating a wall of energy that no ship could possibly survive. The Terran vessel flew straight into the barrage and emerged unscratched on the other side. Another series of spacetime distortions lanced out from the human ship. The dreadnought Eternal Glory simply ceased to exist, its matter converted to energy in a flash of brilliant light. 49 became 48. "All ships, focus fire," Vextar commanded. "Bring everything to bear on that vessel." The entire fleet turned its weapons on the single Terran battleship. The combined firepower was enough to crack a moon in half. Space itself seemed to burn as unimaginable energies converged on one target. The Retribution disappeared in the explosion. For a moment, Vextar allowed himself to believe they had won. No ship could survive that much concentrated firepower. Then, the smoke cleared, and the Terran vessel emerged completely undamaged. "What are these creatures?" Commander Thaleke asked in horror. Captain Chen's voice filled the bridge once again. "Last warning, Admiral. Withdraw immediately, or face total annihilation." Vextar stared at the tactical display in growing panic. 2 of his mighty dreadnoughts were gone, destroyed as easily as if they were civilian transports. The remaining 48 ships continued firing everything they had, but their weapons seemed completely ineffective against the alien vessel. "Sir," the communications officer said quietly, "the Keplerian forces have stopped attacking. They're just watching." On the planet below, millions of Keplerians who had been preparing for slavery and death now stared up at their monitors in amazement. The single alien ship was fighting the entire Caltherian fleet and winning. The Retribution accelerated again, moving so fast it seemed to be in multiple places at once. Its weapons fired in perfectly calculated patterns, each shot precisely aimed at critical systems. 3 more dreadnoughts died in quick succession, their hulls torn apart by forces that violated every known law of physics. 45 dreadnoughts remained. Admiral, the sensor officer said in a shaking voice, I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the alien vessel. Whatever they're preparing, it's unlike anything in our database. Vexstar watched in fascination and terror as the retribution began to glow with an inner light. The space around the ship started to distort, reality itself bending under forces that seemed to come from another dimension. All ships, emergency jump, he ordered. Get us out of here now. But it was too late. The Terran ship fired its main weapon. What emerged was not a beam or projectile, but a wave of pure destruction that rewrote the laws of physics wherever it passed. 10 dreadnoughts simply vanished, erased from existence so completely that even their component atoms ceased to be. The remaining ships fled in panic, their crews abandoning 3,000 years of military discipline in the face of something beyond their comprehension. The mighty Caltherian fleet, terror of the galaxy, scattered like frightened animals before a single human battleship. Captain Chen watched the enemy vessels disappear into hyperspace, their retreat confirming what the humans had suspected. The Caltherians were bullies, used to fighting primitive civilizations that couldn't fight back. When faced with real opposition, they broke and ran. Status report, she ordered. All systems nominal, Captain, her tactical officer replied. 0 damage to ship or crew. Enemy fleet has completely withdrawn from the system. Excellent. Open a channel to the Keplerian government. The viewscreen switched to show the interior of what appeared to be an emergency command bunker. Dozens of Keplerian officials stared back at her with expressions of awe and disbelief. This is Captain Chen of the Terran Federation, she said. The immediate threat has been eliminated. Are your people safe? The lead Keplerian, an elderly being with silver scales, stepped forward with obvious difficulty. Captain, we don't understand. How did you defeat them so easily? The Caltherian Empire has never been defeated. They've ruled this sector for millennia. They've never faced humanity before, Captain Chen replied simply. We've been watching their expansion for some time, waiting for the right moment to act. Your people's courage in resisting them provided that opportunity. But you're just one ship. They had 50 dreadnoughts. And they still lost. Chen's expression softened slightly. The Caltherians are used to fighting civilizations that are thousands of years behind them technologically. They've never encountered a species that actually surpassed them. The Keplerian leader's eyes widened with understanding. You're more advanced than they are? Significantly more advanced. What you witnessed today was a demonstration, not a battle. The Retribution is just one of many ships in the Terran fleet. On the planet's surface, news of the victory spread like wildfire. Celebrations erupted in every major city as beings who had been preparing for death realized they were free. The Caltherian Empire, the unstoppable force that had crushed 100 civilizations, had been defeated by creatures no one had ever heard of. But, in the depths of space, Admiral Vexstar was already composing his report to the Caltherian High Command. The Empire had faced setbacks before, though none quite this severe. They would adapt, learn from this encounter, and return with better weapons. What he didn't know was that the humans were counting on exactly that reaction. Captain Chen stood on her bridge, watching the celebrating crowds on the planet below. Her mission had been a complete success, but it was only the beginning. For centuries, the Terran Federation had remained hidden, building their strength while watching the Caltherians terrorize innocent worlds. Now it was time for the galaxy to learn what happened when someone finally dared to oppose the bullies. The real war was about to begin. Supreme Admiral Kexthal received the emergency transmission while reviewing patrol reports in his private chambers aboard the command station orbiting the Caltherian homeworld. The massive artificial structure housed the Empire's military leadership and had never received a distress call from a fleet engagement. Such things simply did not happen. Impossible, he said after reviewing Admiral Vexstar's report for the third time. You're telling me that a single alien vessel destroyed 13 dreadnoughts and forced the entire fleet to retreat? Vexstar's image on the holographic display showed signs of stress that Kexthal had never seen before. The Admiral's scales had lost their usual luster, and his mandibles twitched with nervous energy. Supreme Admiral, I know how it sounds, but I have the tactical recordings. This species, these Terrans, their technology is beyond anything we've encountered. No species is beyond our understanding, Kexthal replied firmly. The Empire has conquered over 2,000 worlds. We have catalogued every form of weaponry, every defensive system, every possible military strategy. What you describe violates fundamental laws of physics. Then, they have found ways to rewrite those laws. Kexthal studied the tactical data flowing across his screens. The recordings showed weapons that seemed to manipulate spacetime itself, shields that deflected energy at impossible angles, and propulsion systems that allowed instantaneous acceleration without apparent inertial effects. It was either the most sophisticated fraud in galactic history or evidence of technology that surpassed even the Empire's greatest achievements. Where did these Terrans come from? He asked. Unknown, sir. No record of their homeworld or civilization exists in our databases. They appeared without warning and engaged our forces with complete knowledge of our capabilities. And their demands? Complete withdrawal from Keplerian space. No negotiations, no tribute, no acknowledgement of imperial authority. They simply ordered us to leave. Kexthal's claws scraped against his command throne. In 3,000 years, no one had given orders to the Caltherian Empire. The very concept was so alien that their language barely had words to express it. Supreme Admiral, Vextar continued, I believe we're dealing with a civilization that has been watching us for an extended period. Their captain spoke perfect galactic standard and demonstrated detailed knowledge of our fleet composition and tactics. Spies? More likely long-range surveillance. Their sensors are clearly more advanced than ours. They may have been studying Imperial operations for decades without our knowledge. The implications were staggering. If an unknown civilization had been monitoring the Empire's expansion, they would have observed thousands of conquest operations. They would know Caltherian strengths, weaknesses, and standard procedures. More importantly, they would understand exactly how the Empire treated conquered worlds. Kexthal activated the strategic planning display. The galaxy spread out before him, with Imperial territory marked in crimson. The Andromeda sector alone contained over 300 conquered systems, each one contributing resources and forced labor to the Empire's continued expansion. Analysis suggests these Terrans have been preparing for this confrontation, he said slowly. This was not a chance encounter or spontaneous defense of an ally. This was a calculated demonstration of power. My thoughts exactly, sir. The precision of their attack, the timing of their arrival, the specific threats they made, everything indicates long-term planning. Then, we must assume they have more ships. Vextar's image nodded grimly. The captain implied as much. She referred to the Retribution as just one of many ships in the Terran fleet. Kexthal stood and began pacing around the strategic display. His mind raced through possibilities, each one more disturbing than the last. If the Terrans possessed multiple vessels with capabilities similar to the Retribution, they represented a threat unlike any the Empire had faced. Have you attempted to locate their home system? We dispatched scout ships to conduct long-range reconnaissance along their approach vector. All have failed to report back. Failed to report, or failed to return? Unknown, sir. They simply vanished from our tracking systems. The Supreme Admiral's mandibles clicked in frustration. Losing scout ships to an unknown enemy suggested sophisticated detection and interdiction capabilities. The Terrans were not simply advanced, they were actively preventing the Empire from gathering intelligence. Sir, Vextar said hesitantly, there's something else. Since our withdrawal from the Keplerian system, we've received reports from other sector commands. Similar encounters are occurring throughout Imperial space. Kexthal froze. What do you mean, similar encounters? Individual human ships appearing at conquest sites, demanding Imperial withdrawal. So far, 17 separate incidents across 12 sectors. In every case, our forces have been forced to retreat. The magnitude of the situation hit Kexthal like a physical blow. This was not a local phenomenon or isolated incident. The Terrans were conducting a coordinated campaign against Imperial expansion, striking simultaneously across thousands of light-years of space. Casualties? Minimal so far. The humans seem to prefer demonstration over destruction. They disable a few ships to prove their capabilities, then allow survivors to withdraw. But, Supreme Admiral. Vextar paused, choosing his words carefully. Our crews are terrified. Word is spreading throughout the fleet. Morale is collapsing. Kexthal studied the tactical reports streaming in from across the Empire. Each engagement followed the same pattern: a single human vessel would appear, demonstrate overwhelming technological superiority, demand Imperial withdrawal, then allow the defeated fleet to retreat. It was psychological warfare of the highest order. They're not trying to destroy us, he realized. They're trying to break us. Sir? Think about it. These Terrans could clearly annihilate any Imperial fleet they encounter. Yet they choose restraint. They want our crews to survive, to spread word of these defeats, to carry fear back to the Empire. Vextar's scales rippled with understanding. They're destroying our reputation for invincibility. Exactly. For 3 millennia, the Empire's greatest weapon has been the knowledge that resistance is futile. Every species in the galaxy knows that challenging Caltharian might leads only to destruction. But, now they know we can be beaten. Kexthal activated the communication array, establishing direct contact with the Caltharian High Council. Within minutes, the images of 12 ancient beings appeared in holographic form around his command center. These were the rulers of the Empire, beings who had guided Caltharian expansion for over 1,000 years. Supreme Admiral, spoke Council Prime Zexvara, her voice carrying the authority of absolute power. We have reviewed the preliminary reports. Explain to us how a single alien vessel could defeat an entire sector fleet. Counselors, we are facing a technologically superior enemy. The Terrans possess capabilities that exceed our current understanding of physics. More critically, they appear to be conducting a galaxy-wide campaign against Imperial expansion. Counselor Velhan, ancient even by Caltharian standards, leaned forward with interest. Galaxy-wide? Explain. 17 confirmed encounters across 12 sectors, all occurring within the past 72 hours. The coordination required suggests a civilization with communication and transportation capabilities far beyond our own. And their intentions? Unknown, but their pattern of behavior suggests they want to force a complete Imperial withdrawal from all recently conquered territories. They're systematically targeting our expansion operations while avoiding our core systems. Council Prime Zexvara's mandibles spread in what might have been either amusement or anger. They seek to roll back 3,000 years of Imperial growth? That appears to be their objective, yes. Impossible. Even if they possess superior technology, they cannot be everywhere at once. The Empire spans half the galaxy. We control thousands of systems, trillions of subjects, and maintain the largest fleet in known space. Kexthal hesitated before responding. The Council's confidence was understandable but potentially dangerous. They had ruled unchallenged for so long that the concept of serious opposition was almost incomprehensible to them. Counselors, with respect, we may be underestimating our opponents. If the Terrans have been monitoring Imperial operations for extended periods, they would have detailed knowledge of our fleet positions, supply lines, and strategic priorities. They could be using that information to strike precisely where we're most vulnerable. Then, we will show them the full might of the Empire, declared Councillor Thexmol. Assemble the Grand Fleet. Every dreadnought, every battlecruiser, every escort vessel. We will find their homeworld and burn it to ash. Sir, we don't know the location of their homeworld. Our reconnaissance missions have failed to, then, we will draw them out, interrupted Council Prime Zexvara. If these Terrans are so concerned with protecting primitive civilizations, we will give them something to protect. Order the immediate conquest of every inhabited system within 50 light-years of known Terran activity. When they arrive to defend these worlds, we will be waiting with the assembled might of the entire Imperial Navy. Kexthal felt a chill run through his body. The Grand Fleet consisted of over 8,000 warships, including 300 dreadnoughts. It was the largest concentration of military force in galactic history. But, if the Terrans' individual ships were as powerful as reports suggested, numbers might not be enough. Counselors, perhaps we should attempt diplomatic contact first. If we can understand their motives, there will be no diplomacy with upstart aliens, Velhan declared. The Empire does not negotiate with its subjects. These Terrans will learn their place, or they will be destroyed. The holographic images faded, leaving Kexthal alone in his command center with orders that might doom the Empire. He understood the Council's reasoning: they had never faced a serious military challenge and could not conceive of defeat. But everything about the Terran encounters suggested they were dealing with opponents who had planned for exactly this scenario. Admiral Vextar, he said, reactivating the communication link. You are ordered to join the Grand Fleet Assembly at the Nexus Station. Bring every ship under your command. Yes, Supreme Admiral. But, sir, what about the psychological impact on our forces? Many of our crews have never experienced defeat before. Morale is already compromised. The Grand Fleet will restore their confidence. When our warriors see 8,000 Imperial warships assembled for battle, they will remember why the galaxy fears us. But, as Kexthal signed the mobilization orders, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Terrans were counting on exactly this response. Every move the Empire made seemed to play directly into their opponent's strategy. Across the galaxy, human monitoring stations detected the massive fleet movements as Imperial forces began converging on the Nexus Station. The Caltherian response was proceeding exactly as predicted. Admiral Sarah Harrison stood in the command center of the hidden Terran facility orbiting the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy, watching as her carefully laid plans unfolded. The psychological campaign had worked perfectly. The Empire was abandoning its defensive posture and concentrating its forces for a decisive battle. All human vessels report ready, Admiral, her aide announced. Excellent. How many Imperial ships are we tracking? 8,437 at last count. Every major fleet element in the Empire appears to be converging on their assembly point. Harrison smiled. The Caltherians were making the classic mistake of applying outdated thinking to a revolutionary situation. They still believed that superior numbers guaranteed victory, not understanding that the nature of warfare itself had changed. Signal all task force commanders, she ordered. Operation Judgment Day is now active. The Empire has chosen to make their stand. Let's show them what happens when someone finally fights back. The real battle was about to begin, and humanity was ready. The Nexus Station hung in space like a massive metal city, its countless docking bays filled with the greatest concentration of military power the galaxy had ever seen. Over 8,000 Caltherian warships surrounded the ancient facility, their crimson hulls creating a sea of deadly metal that stretched beyond the horizon. Dreadnoughts the size of mountains floated alongside countless smaller vessels, all preparing for what their commanders believed would be the final battle against the upstart Terrans. Supreme Admiral Kexthal stood in the station's primary command center, surveying tactical displays that showed the assembled Grand Fleet in all its terrible glory. 300 dreadnoughts, 1,500 battlecruisers, 2,000 destroyers, and over 3,000 support vessels. The combined firepower could sterilize entire star systems. Status report, he ordered. Fleet Admiral Dexquan, the Empire's most experienced combat commander, stepped forward. His scales bore the scars of 100 battles, and his eyes held the cold calculation of a lifetime warrior. All fleet elements are in position, Supreme Admiral. We have established a defensive perimeter around 12 target systems containing primitive civilizations. When the Terrans arrive to defend them, we will have them trapped. Kexthal studied the strategic map. The plan was elegant in its simplicity: use innocent worlds as bait to draw out the human fleet, then crush them with overwhelming force. It was the kind of strategy that had served the Empire well for millennia. Intelligence estimates on enemy strength? Based on confirmed sightings, we're tracking no more than 50 individual Terran vessels. Even if they possess advanced technology, they cannot stand against these numbers. And if their technology is more advanced than we assume? Dexquan's mandibles clicked with confidence. Supreme Admiral, I have commanded Imperial fleets for over 2 centuries. I've seen every form of alien technology, every possible tactical innovation. There are physical limits to what any single ship can accomplish. Our massed firepower will simply overwhelm their defenses. Kexthal nodded slowly, though something about the situation still bothered him. The Terrans had demonstrated remarkable strategic planning so far. Would they really walk into such an obvious trap? Sir, the communications officer interrupted, we're receiving a transmission from the Keplerian system. It's from the humans. Put it through. The main view screen activated, showing the bridge of a Terran vessel. But, instead of the familiar figure of Captain Chen, a different human stood at the center. This one was older, with gray hair and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of command experience. I am Admiral Sarah Harrison of the Terran Federation, the human said calmly. You may address me as the commanding officer of all Terran forces in this region. Kexthal stepped forward. I am Supreme Admiral Kexthal of the Caltherian Empire. You will surrender immediately and submit to Imperial justice for your attacks on our fleets. Admiral Harrison's expression didn't change. I'm calling to give you one final opportunity to avoid unnecessary destruction. Withdraw your forces from all occupied systems, release your slave populations, and return to your core territories. You have 12 hours to begin compliance. The entire command center fell silent. Even the veteran Fleet Admiral Dexquan stared at the screen in disbelief. A human commander was giving ultimatums to the assembled might of the Caltherian Empire. You are clearly insane, Kexthal said finally. Do you have any comprehension of what you're facing? 8,000 warships, Supreme Admiral. The largest fleet in galactic history. We're aware of your fleet composition, Harrison replied. 8,437 vessels, including 312 dreadnoughts. Assembled at the Nexus station in grid reference Theta 77 Alpha. Kexthal's blood ran cold. The human had just recited classified fleet positions with perfect accuracy. How do you know those details? We've been watching you for a very long time, Admiral. We know your fleet strength, your supply lines, your command structure, and your tactical doctrine. We also know that you're using innocent civilian populations as bait to draw us into battle. And you're going to fall for it, Dexquan interjected, stepping into view of the camera. Your primitive sense of morality compels you to protect the weak. You will come to save those worlds, and we will destroy you. Harrison's eyes shifted to the scarred fleet admiral. You must be Dexquan. 200 years of service, veteran of the Altarian genocide, architect of the Spiral campaign. Your tactical records make for interesting reading. Dexquan's scales rippled with surprise. The humans had detailed files on individual Imperial commanders, which suggested intelligence gathering on an unprecedented scale. You studied me, he asked. We've studied all of you. Your species has been conquering and enslaving others for 3,000 years. We know exactly how you think, how you fight, and how you justify your actions. That's why this conversation is pointless. Then, why are you talking to us? Kexthal demanded. Because despite everything you've done, we're giving you a chance to stop. To end this before it goes too far. You can withdraw peacefully and limit yourselves to your core systems. Your people can continue to exist, just without the ability to terrorize others. Fleet Admiral Dexquan laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the command center. Withdraw? We are the Caltherian Empire. We have ruled this galaxy since before your primitive species learned to make fire. You dare to dictate terms to us? We don't dictate, Harrison said quietly. We simply explain consequences. You have 12 hours to begin withdrawing from occupied territories. After that, we will consider your continued expansion an act of war against the Terran Federation. The transmission ended, leaving the Imperial commanders staring at a blank screen. Arrogant primitives, Dexquan muttered. They'll learn respect soon enough. But Kexthal was studying the communication logs with growing concern. How did they know our exact fleet composition? How did they know Dexquan's service record? How did they know our precise location? Spies, obviously. We'll root them out after we crush their fleet. What if there are no spies? What if their surveillance capabilities are so advanced that they can monitor our communications and track our ship movements without us detecting them? Dexquan's confidence faltered slightly. Even if that's true, Supreme Admiral, they still have to face us in battle. Technology can only compensate for so much. Numbers still matter. Kexthal hoped the fleet admiral was right. But something about the human admiral's calm certainty bothered him. She had looked at the assembled might of the Empire and shown no fear, no doubt, no concern. Either the humans were completely insane, or they knew something the Empire didn't. Alert all ships, he ordered. Maintain combat readiness. If the humans want a fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget. 12 hours later, long-range sensors detected the approach of Terran vessels. Not the 50 ships intelligence had estimated, but over 200 contacts moving in perfect formation toward Imperial positions. 200 ships against 8,000, Dexquan said with satisfaction. Even with advanced technology, those are impossible odds. The Terran fleet entered the system with the same fluid grace they'd demonstrated in previous encounters. Their ships moved like living things, dark hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange energy signatures surrounded each vessel, power readings that made no sense according to known physics. Fleet Admiral, the sensor officer reported nervously, I'm reading massive energy buildup from all Terran vessels. Power levels are. Supreme Admiral, these readings are impossible. Each ship is generating more energy than our entire dreadnought squadrons. Kexthal felt his confidence crumble. How is that possible? Unknown, sir. Their power sources don't match any known technology. On the tactical display, the human fleet formed a perfect sphere in space, with Admiral Harrison's flagship at the center. They made no aggressive moves, sent no threats, simply waited in formation as if daring the Empire to attack first. They're waiting for us to make the first move, Dexquan observed. Typical prey behavior. They hope to claim self-defense. Or they're giving us one last chance to surrender, Kexthal said quietly. Surrender? To 200 ships? The Supreme Admiral watched the tactical display with growing dread. Everything about the human formation suggested supreme confidence. They had positioned themselves in the center of 8,000 enemy vessels and showed no concern for their situation. Fleet Admiral, I want you to take personal command of our most experienced squadron. 50 dreadnoughts, veteran crews, coordinated attack. If the humans are as advanced as they claim, we need to test their capabilities before committing the entire fleet. Dexquan's eyes gleamed with anticipation. With pleasure, Supreme Admiral. The veteran commander transferred his flag to the dreadnought Conquest Eternal, leading 50 of the Empire's most powerful ships toward the human formation. These were not inexperienced crews facing an unknown enemy, these were elite warriors who had participated in hundreds of successful conquests. All ships, weapons free, Dexquan commanded. Target the enemy flagship. Concentrated fire on my mark. Mark. 50 dreadnoughts fired simultaneously, unleashing enough destructive power to crack a planet's crust. Energy beams, particle cannons, fusion warheads, and plasma bolts converged on Admiral Harrison's ship in a display of force that should have annihilated any target. The human flagship absorbed the entire barrage without visible damage. Impossible, Dexquan whispered. Nothing can withstand that much firepower. The Terran fleet moved as one. In perfect synchronization, all 200 ships opened fire with weapons that seemed to rewrite reality itself. Beams of pure mathematics struck the Imperial squadron, and 50 dreadnoughts simply ceased to exist. 50 of the Empire's mightiest vessels, crewed by 20,000 experienced warriors, vanished in an instant. No explosions, no debris, no energy signatures. They were simply erased from existence as if they had never been built. Report! Kexthal shouted across the communication link. Gone, came Dexquan's shaken voice from his backup ship. They're all gone. Supreme Admiral, what are these creatures? On the view screen, Admiral Harrison appeared once again. Your 12 hours have expired, she said calmly. We offered you the chance to withdraw peacefully. You chose war instead. You destroyed 50 dreadnoughts, Kexthal said in horrified fascination. How? We've had 3 centuries to prepare for this confrontation. 3 centuries to study your empire, develop countermeasures, and build the weapons necessary to stop you. Did you really think we would reveal our capabilities before we were ready to use them? 3 centuries? That's impossible. We've never encountered your species before. Harrison's expression became cold. You've never encountered us directly. But, we've been watching you exterminate civilizations since before you conquered the Altarian Republic. We've seen you enslave entire species, burn worlds that refuse to submit, and turn sentient beings into livestock. We've been waiting for the right moment to act. The magnitude of the deception hit Kexthal like a physical blow. The Terrans hadn't stumbled upon the Empire by accident. They had been conducting surveillance for centuries, studying Caltherian tactics and technology, preparing for war while remaining completely hidden. What do you want? He asked. The complete dismantling of your empire. All slave worlds will be liberated. All conquered territories will be returned to their original inhabitants. Your military will be reduced to defensive forces only. You will never again expand beyond your core systems. And, if we refuse? Admiral Harrison's smile was colder than the vacuum of space. Then, we will demonstrate why no one should have dared to oppose us for as long as you did. The human fleet began to move, and Kexthal realized with dawning horror that the real battle was just beginning. Supreme Admiral Kexthal watched in fascination and terror as the human fleet spread into attack formation. 200 ships against nearly 8,000, yet the Terrans moved with the confidence of an overwhelming force. Their vessels flowed through space like liquid metal, each one surrounded by energy fields that bent light itself. All ships, he transmitted across the fleet communication network, engage the enemy. Everything we have. The Grand Fleet opened fire. 8,000 warships unleashed their fury simultaneously. The combined barrage was beyond comprehension, enough energy to sterilize multiple star systems, directed at 200 targets. Space itself seemed to burn as unimaginable forces converged on the human fleet. The Terran ships moved through the attack like ghosts. Energy beams that should have vaporized any target simply passed through their hulls without effect. Missiles exploded harmlessly against shields that existed in dimensions the Caltharanes couldn't even perceive. The greatest military force in galactic history was firing everything it had at an enemy that seemed to exist partially outside reality itself. How are they doing that? Fleet Admiral Dexquan demanded from his temporary flagship. Unknown, sir, the sensor officer replied. Their defensive systems appear to be manipulating spacetime itself. They're not blocking our weapons, they're making them miss on a fundamental level. Admiral Harrison's voice filled the command frequency once again. 3,000 years of conquest, and this is the best you can manage? We're disappointed. The human fleet fired back. What emerged from their weapons wasn't energy or matter, but pure physics, fundamental forces that reached across space and rewrote the laws governing Imperial ships. The first wave struck 300 Caltharian vessels simultaneously, and they simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but erased from reality so completely that even the memory of their construction seemed questionable. Impossible, Kexthal whispered. What kind of weapons are those? They're not weapons in any sense we understand, his science officer reported with shaking voice. They appear to be manipulating the basic constants of physics. Matter, energy, spacetime itself, they're treating them like programming languages. The second Terran salvo eliminated another 500 ships. The third wave erased an entire dreadnought squadron from existence. With each attack, more of the Grand Fleet simply ceased to be, leaving no wreckage, no energy signatures, no evidence they had ever existed. Sir, the communications officer said urgently, we're receiving surrender requests from multiple fleet commanders. Morale is collapsing throughout the formation. Kexthal stared at the tactical display as centuries of military tradition crumbled before his eyes. The Grand Fleet, terror of the galaxy, was dissolving in panic as ship after ship vanished into nothingness. Veteran commanders who had never known defeat were abandoning their positions and fleeing into hyperspace. This is impossible, he said to himself. No species can be this advanced. Admiral Harrison's image appeared on his personal communication screen. You're right, she said, having somehow intercepted his private transmission. No single species could develop this level of technology. We didn't do it alone. What do you mean? For 3 centuries, we've been building an alliance. Every species your empire conquered, every civilization you destroyed, every world you enslaved, some survived. Some escaped. Some remembered. We found them, helped them, gave them new homes, and, most importantly, we learned from them. The magnitude of the revelation staggered Kexthal. You've been collecting refugees from our conquests? Millions of them. Billions. Every species has unique knowledge, unique perspectives on physics and technology. What you see as primitive civilizations, we saw as brilliant minds held back by limited resources. When you give 1,000 different alien scientists access to advanced laboratories and unlimited cooperation, amazing things become possible. On the tactical display, the human ships began changing configuration. Their hulls flowed like liquid, reforming into new shapes that incorporated technologies from dozens of different species. Weapons emerged that bore the distinctive signatures of civilizations the Empire had thought extinct. The quantum manipulators are based on Alterian mathematics, Harrison continued conversationally, as her fleet continued erasing Imperial vessels from existence. The dimensional shields use Nexary spacefolding techniques. The reality anchors that make our ships untouchable were developed by the Vexthani before you destroyed their homeworld. You're using our victims against us. We're using their knowledge to ensure no one suffers what they suffered. Every species you've conquered contributed to this moment. They wanted to see their oppressors face justice. Another wave of Terran fire eliminated the entire 5th battle group. 700 ships vanished in an instant, their crews never understanding what killed them. The remaining Imperial forces scattered in all directions, abandoning any pretense of formation or tactics. "Sir," Fleet Admiral Dexquan's voice came across the emergency frequency, "I'm ordering a general retreat. We can't fight this. Whatever these creatures are, they're beyond our ability to resist." Denied, Kexthal responded automatically, though his heart wasn't in the command. "The Empire does not retreat. The Empire is already dead," Dexquan replied. "Look around you. We've lost 3/4 of the Grand Fleet. Our crews are fleeing in panic. This isn't a battle, it's an execution." Kexthal looked at his tactical displays and saw the truth in the Fleet Admiral's words. Of the 8,000 ships that had assembled at the Nexus station, fewer than 2,000 remained. And those were scattering across the galaxy as fast as their engines could carry them. "This is Supreme Admiral Kexthal to all Imperial forces," he said slowly. "General retreat. All ships, withdraw to the home system." The order that he had never imagined giving echoed across the fleet communication network. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Caltherian Empire was in full retreat. But Admiral Harrison wasn't finished. "You can run," her voice followed them across the galaxy, "but you can't hide. We know the location of every Imperial world, every military base, every slave camp. We have complete records of your operations, compiled over 3 centuries of observation. There is nowhere in this galaxy you can go that we cannot find you." The surviving Imperial ships fled toward the Caltherian home system, carrying news of the most devastating defeat in galactic history. Behind them, the human fleet began the systematic liberation of every world the Empire had conquered. It took 6 months for the Terran Federation to dismantle 3,000 years of Imperial expansion. Human ships appeared at conquered worlds throughout the galaxy, demanding the immediate release of slave populations and the withdrawal of occupying forces. Those who complied were allowed to leave peacefully. Those who resisted were simply erased. Kexthal spent those months in the Caltherian home system, watching his civilization collapse. Sector after sector declared independence or surrendered to human forces. Colonial governors fled their posts. Slave worlds erupted in rebellion, knowing that liberation was coming. "Supreme Admiral," his aide reported during one of their daily briefings, "we've lost contact with the Outer Rim territories. All Imperial forces in the Perseus Arm have either surrendered or disappeared." "And the core worlds?" "Secure for now, but human ships have been detected on the periphery. They're establishing a blockade around our remaining territory." Kexthal nodded wearily. The humans were being systematic about their conquest, just as they had been systematic about their preparation. They weren't destroying the Caltherian species, they were surgically removing its ability to threaten others. "Sir," the communication officer interrupted, "incoming transmission from a Terran vessel." "Put it through." Admiral Harrison appeared on the screen, but this time she wasn't on a ship's bridge. Behind her stretched what appeared to be a massive space station, its corridors filled with beings from dozens of different species. "Supreme Admiral," she said formally, "I'm calling to discuss terms." "Terms of surrender?" "Terms of transition. Your empire is finished, but your people don't have to be. We're prepared to offer the Caltherian species membership in the Galactic Federation, under certain conditions." Kexthal laughed bitterly. "You mean we can become your subjects? You can become equal partners in a galaxy-wide alliance dedicated to peaceful cooperation and mutual advancement. The same offer we've made to every species you formerly ruled." "And the conditions?" "Complete disarmament of your military beyond basic defensive forces. Reparations to the species you enslaved, in the form of shared technology and resources. Truth and reconciliation proceedings to account for 3,000 years of genocide. And, most importantly, constitutional changes that prevent your government from ever again engaging in expansionist policies." "You're asking us to abandon everything we are." Harrison's expression softened slightly. "We're asking you to abandon everything you've done wrong and become what you could have been." The Caltherian species has produced remarkable achievements in science, engineering, and space exploration. That knowledge could benefit the entire galaxy if it's used for creation instead of destruction. Kexthal studied the space station behind the Admiral, noting the incredible diversity of beings working together. Hundreds of species that had once been enemies or strangers, now collaborating on projects that would have been impossible alone. What happened to our colonies? Our subject worlds? They've been liberated. Some chose independence, others joined the Federation immediately. A few are still deciding what they want their future to look like. But, all of them are free to make that choice. And, our people on those worlds? Safe. We don't punish civilians for the crimes of their governments. Caltherian settlers who want to remain on former colony worlds can do so as equal citizens with the native populations. Those who prefer to return home are being transported back to your core systems. The Supreme Admiral looked around his command center at the few remaining officers who hadn't fled or defected. These beings had spent their entire lives serving the Empire, believing in its mission of galactic domination. Now they were being offered the chance to serve something entirely different. How do I know you won't simply destroy us once we're disarmed? Because we've had the power to destroy you for 3 centuries and chose not to use it until we had no other option. If we wanted to commit genocide, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Kexthal weighed his options. The Caltherian military was broken, its ships scattered or destroyed. The Empire's subject worlds had been liberated, its economy was collapsing, and its people were looking to their leaders for answers that no longer existed. What guarantee do we have that this federation of yours won't become just another empire? The guarantee is that it's run by species who remember what imperial oppression feels like. Every member world has either been conquered, enslaved, or threatened by expansionist powers. They're not interested in recreating what they suffered. They want to build something better. On the screens around his command center, Kexthal could see reports from across the galaxy. Former imperial slave worlds celebrating their freedom. Refugee populations returning to homelands they thought they'd lost forever. Species that had been enemies for millennia working together on joint research projects. If we agree to these terms, he said slowly, what role would the Caltherian people play in this federation? Whatever role you earn. Your species has 3,000 years of spacefaring experience and advanced technology. That knowledge would be invaluable for peaceful exploration and development. There are entire regions of the galaxy we haven't mapped yet, phenomena we don't understand, challenges that require the best minds from every species working together. For the first time since the battle at Nexus Station, Kexthal felt something other than despair. The human admiral was offering his people a chance to be explorers again, instead of conquerors. I'll need to consult with the High Council, he said. Of course. Take all the time you need. But, understand that the old galaxy is gone. The age of empires is over. The only question now is whether your species wants to be part of building what comes next. The transmission ended, leaving Kexthal alone with the most important decision in Caltherian history. Around him, the remnants of the greatest military force in the galaxy waited for orders that would either doom their species or give it a chance at redemption. 3 days later, he opened a channel to the human fleet. Admiral Harrison, he said formally, the Caltherian High Council accepts your terms. We surrender unconditionally and request entry into the Galactic Federation. Welcome to the future, she replied. Let's build it together. 1 year later, former Supreme Admiral Kexthal stood on the observation deck of a joint Federation exploration vessel, watching as its mixed crew of humans, Caltheranes, and dozen other species prepared to make the first documented journey beyond the galactic rim. His new rank was Mission Commander, and his orders were to explore, not conquer. Behind him, the galaxy they left was no longer divided between conquerors and conquered. It was a community of equals, working together to understand the universe and their place in it. The age when no one dared oppose the mighty had ended. The age when everyone could be mighty together had begun.